Hey everybody, Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com, back with some Pittsburgh Steelers preview and prediction for this Week 11 game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and Baltimore Ravens. Critical AFC North matchup, the first divisional game Pittsburgh has played this year. It's a big one to determine who will hold first place in the North exiting Week 11. Let's talk about it. Before we start, if you guys could like this video, subscribe to the channel, and check out the site, SteelersDepot.com. Would really appreciate that. So let's start with this Baltimore offense, the most potent in football, number one in many categories, most importantly being points per game. They've scored 30 plus in 6 of their last 7. They've scored 41 points exactly 3 times this season. They're number one in yards. If their yardage per game holds, it'll be the most successful offense in that category since the 2013 Denver Broncos. So point is, they are rolling right now. It always starts, as it did against Washington last week, with quarterback mobility, quarterback run game. How do you defend it and approach it? And this is going to be extra tricky, I think, than typical against Baltimore, because in the past, Pittsburgh's approach has been take Lamar's legs out of it as much as possible, let the running back have more success, and if the running back has, is the guy that beat you, then so be it, but we'll take our chances. In this situation, you're facing Derrick Henry, who's a top 2 running back in football this season alongside Saquon Barkley. So do you go all in to stop Lamar at the expense of letting Derrick Henry run wild? Pittsburgh will use that mesh charge and attack the quarterback to force the give, which takes the quarterback's legs out of it, as it did Daniels last weekend. But Austin Eckler, with 10 defenders versus Derrick Henry with 10 defenders, 2 totally different situations. So my overall thought in this game, and I don't know what Pittsburgh will do. I don't know if they're going to change up their approach. I think you let Lamar have more success to run the ball in this one, in the scramble as well. We'll talk about that in a second, because I think you just can't let Derrick Henry take this game over, as he's so prone and apt to do. And even if you're having moderate success against him early in the game, just the body blows that you're going to take by the fourth quarter, they can really add up and wear down any defense, even one as talented as the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so I just wonder if you kind of let Lamar, who hasn't been running as much this year, they haven't used the zone read, in my view, quite as much this year. He's had a knee injury. Not that you want to let him run completely wild and forget about him, but I think more attention has to be on the back than the quarterback in this game. But to be clear, their run game is much more than just zone reads with Lamar Jackson. They've run a ton of crack toss. They run a lot of gap schemes with guards on the move, and so being able to, meet those guys out in space, a big game for Landon Roberts. Josh Carney and I talked about this on the Terrible Podcast Friday. That's a Steelers kind of guy that has to really set the tone and match the tone of what Baltimore will bring, and he will. He's always done a great job with that. Deshaun Elliott has to do that as well. Of course, run defense will be an 11-man job, but you're really leaning in on Roberts being a focal point in this one. I wonder if Pittsburgh will use some big nickel packages with 3 safeties on the field. That's been done in the past against 12 personnel teams with good receiving tight ends, like Baltimore has in Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, but really want to see Pittsburgh's plan of attack to stop the run. In the past game, Lamar Jackson, having his best season, already has as many touchdowns this year as last year with 24, his highest completion percentage of his career to date at just under 70%, his highest adjusted net yards per passing attempt in NFL history. If his current number of 9.85 holds, it'll be the best number ever. And that's the Dave Bryan favorite that really pinpoints how well and how efficiently a quarterback has played the current records held by Peyton Manning in 2004. So historic stuff. He's en route for his 3rd MVP, and a much more convincing case this year than last year. But there's weapons to throw to as well. Mark Andrews has come on strong. Isaiah Likely can still be a problem, even though his production has dipped. Zay Flowers is really playing good ball for them. Might be one of the more underrated receivers in football right now. He's got 4 games this year of 110 plus yards. That leads the NFL. No one would probably guess that it would Zay Flowers in that category, but it's him. So they're going to run play action. They're going to run over routes. They use a nice mix of horizontal spacing and vertical spacing. Watch out for running back Justice Hill on 3rd down in the screen game. Obviously, Derrick Henry gets all the attention. He's getting the majority of the carries, but Hill's their 3rd down guy, and they'll run wheel routes to him. They run a bunch of screens into the boundary with him. And so you have to be alert for number 43, Justice Hill, 2-minute, third down, those types of situations. They may try to slow down Pittsburgh's pass rush early with a bunch of screens. And so will Pittsburgh have the same approach as they did against Jaden Daniels and even Lamar last year? They blitzed Lamar about half the time in that Week 5 game last year and send 5 and rush to contain, or will they do what they've done for most of the season, which is rush 4, drop 7, play zone, get eyes on a mobile quarterback? You always have to mix things up. It's not one size fits all, but what is going to be the overall game plan? I wonder if Pittsburgh decides to pull back and not rush as much, because I think Baltimore's expecting that based on the Washington game, based on how they played Lamar last season. And even though Pittsburgh beat Baltimore last year and Lamar's numbers weren't great, there were a bunch of drops by the Ravens in that game. That should have been, a win for Baltimore. It wasn't, but, Pittsburgh did not quite play as good as the overall numbers and the outcome would indicate. So really want to see the game plan, of course, with Pittsburgh in the secondary. For the Ravens defense, the elephant in the room, will start with their pass defense, 32nd in yards per game allowed. They have been thrown on more than any other defense in football this year because of their success and their winning ways and building fourth quarter leads. So they've already amounted 400 pass attempts against, 398 to be exact. But even in some of the more relative metrics in yards per attempt, and I think some of the advanced metrics, they've not been successful. So it has been a unit that's talented, and Kyle Hamilton will play, and that's going to be huge for them. But they still have not gotten the job done. I know Baltimore's generally been weaker down the middle of the field, I should say. I know Pittsburgh does not use that real estate too often, but could this be a game for Pat Freiermuth to get involved and to have, probably one of his better games of the year from a yardage and target standpoint? Could certainly see that, but the guys on the outside have to win some tough matchups. The Ravens don't seem to travel Marlon Humphrey. He's a guy that, kind of plays sides and sometimes plays in the slot. They didn't travel with Chase last in Week 10, I should say, and not sure why that was, because Chase was cooking them, so don't get the strategy there from Baltimore. But can Pickens, if he gets on Brandon Stevens, if he gets on the rookie Nate Wiggins, who I liked a lot coming out of Clemson but still a rookie, have to be able to win those matchups. So I still think Pittsburgh will take their shots vertically, test these corners who have not made plays this season, but I don't know. I still think that secondary has some talent, and I just think Baltimore lost a ton of their coaching staff, the organization as a whole. They lost front office member Joe Ortiz to the Chargers to be their GM. They lost multiple defensive coaches. I think they're feeling that and the pain and kind of the having to reinvent themselves and kind of build back up in a sense. So don't know their exact reasons, but Pittsburgh certainly will have to score some points in that past game success, whether it's middle of the field or vertically outside the numbers, needs to continue. Run game, Baltimore's still been very stout. Number 1 in yards per carry allowed. Number 1 in rush yards per game. Don't allow, the big plays in the run game. I think for Pittsburgh, I'm okay going heavier. Baltimore typically doesn't play a true base defense. They're really in more of a 4-2-5, 3 safety package with Hamilton down low. And granted, he basically plays like a linebacker. But still, I think you're okay going heavy. I keep it between the tackles. I know you want to be careful to not run into a brick wall. I am always conscious of that, but you try to run those perimeter runs, those tosses Pittsburgh likes to run. Baltimore's a really good fast flow defense. Teams do not have success. I think you could use some gap scheme. I think some of those wham crunch blocks where you ear hold the 3-tech and some kind of those quick hitting runs that Pittsburgh certainly does run. It is in their playbook. They've come close to hitting it about a half dozen times this year. You might have some success doing that, especially early, to slow those guys down. Their D-line is missing some people. Michael Pierce, their big nose tackle, he's on IR. Travis Jones, one of their other defensive linemen, he is questionable, I believe, for this game. I'm going to guess he'll play, but maybe not 100%. And so that D-line, not quite as stout as it could be optimally. And so Pittsburgh, I still think, has to have success running the ball. I think keeping it between the tackles is the way to do it. And then quickly, special teams. Who gains the advantage there? Pittsburgh overall won out last year with that big pump block that Miles Killebrew had, and they were able to overcome the Gunnar Wolszewski fumble with Porter getting the interception off of that. So Chris Boswell, one of the NFL's best kickers, well rested, did not have to attempt a field goal last week. First time since 2020, Pittsburgh won a game in which they did not attempt a field goal. So there's a fun stat of the weird. Let's hope that continues. Justin Tucker has struggled, especially from 50 plus, which is his calling card, and he missed an extra point in that win over the Bengals. So for the first time in a long time, it's always been close. Boswell's always just been overshadowed by Tucker, but he's always been, excellent besides the injury season or two. But in this game, Pittsburgh may finally have the advantage when it comes to kicker. Boswell at home with a struggling Tucker. No guarantees. Tucker is certainly capable of making anything once Baltimore crosses midfield, but he's not been the same guy this year, and that may give Pittsburgh a leg up in what should be a close game. So, for my world-famous predictions, can I just put a bunch of question marks here? Because I really have battled in my head a lot in terms of which way to go, and you're probably anxiously hoping I pick Baltimore, and my brain says to take the Ravens. I just think the combination of their explosive pass game with a pretty good still run defense is going to be enough. But Pittsburgh has won 7 of the last 8. I did doubt them against Washington, and they showed a really strong defensive game plan overall. Pittsburgh at home, the offense is more potent than it has been in the post-Ben era. So I'm taking the Steelers 23-21. Maybe a late Chris Boswell kick, which has certainly happened before, prevails and puts Pittsburgh over the top. I know you'll hate it for me picking the Steelers. I'm sorry in advance, but that's my selection. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Appreciate you guys watching. Drop your score prediction down. I know you guys will. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and of course, check out the site SteelersDepot.com. Win, loss, or draw. We'll be talking about this on the channel and the site following Sunday's game. Thank you again for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.